What up and welcome to the Rival live stream. We are talking about the top 3 sports headlines of the week. I used to do these type of episodes pre-recorded. I would throw them up every single week. We would talk about the top 3 headlines to me in sports that week. I decided to change the format. We're going to start doing these live. And the goal is to interact with the chat. If people are in here chat, I know it's an odd time of the day. People are on lunch. There might be people in here, but also we'll mix it up. We'll do different live times. Sometimes it'll be at night. Sometimes it'll be early in the morning. Sometimes it'll be in the middle of the day like this in the afternoon. I don't want to drag on about these things, so I'm not going to sit here and like stretch this out, make it an hour long and stuff. Obviously, if the chat is involved, we'll talk about it longer. If the chat isn't involved, we'll just talk about the headlines and sports and see where we go with these things. Now, as you can see, if you read the title of today's live stream, or if you looked at the thumbnail, of course, we have 3 topics of today's show, which are Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs offside situation. We have Shohei Ohtani and the controversy with his contract. And then, of course, we have Zion Williamson and the criticism on his weight, diet, conditioning, however you want to, whatever way you want to change, make it up. Those are the topics right now that we're going to talk about today. We'll start with Shohei Ohtani. Now, this is more about the deal with the Dodgers, right? Everyone knows that Shohei Ohtani signed a 10-year, $700 million contract, which is the richest contract in the history of American sports. And Ohtani deserves the most money in baseball, right? Like, I know he can't pitch this upcoming season because of the surgery he's had, so he'll just be a non-pitcher at this point. He'll still play, but just as a non-pitcher. That's not really the controversy. It's not really the amount. It's not really about where he signed. Like, it's all good where he signed. It's all good the amount. We know these numbers are just always going to continue to go up and up. Ohtani is the best in the sport. He has a lot of crossover appeal. So there's lots of things here that come into play. It's not the contract itself, though, not the amount itself. It's not the $700 million that's necessarily being criticized. What's being criticized is that there's a deferment in Ohtani's contract. And when you say, what does deferment mean? What is the deferred money about? Basically, he's deferring more than 90% of his earnings during that 10 years to be paid from 2034 to 2043. So instead of $700 million actually being paid out to Ohtani by the Dodgers during that 10-year contract, he's going to get that money paid to him at a different time period. So $2 million each year, I believe it was, and then the rest is going to be like $45 million per year during that other 2034 to 2043 time. And this has happened before, right? Like, he is not the first deferred contract. He's not going to be the last deferred contract. The Mets famously had the Bobby Bonilla situation where they're still paying him on his deferred contract. There's other players who have done it. So this is just the deferred part of it is not really, the issue. It's just he's the highest one that's ever occurred. And of course, it's the Dodgers. It's Los Angeles. It's baseball. So there's all this controversy around it because people don't want to see the Dodgers get Ohtani. They think that, the Dodgers having the ability to get Ohtani and only pay him this small, significant portion of the deal allows them to get a whole bunch of other players and continue to max out the deals. And let's be honest, like, MLB is already under this criticism, this knock that it gets about not having a salary cap, which, you could argue all different ways. Like, in theory, teams with low salary caps have competed and have done really well, while teams with high salary caps, like we've seen the Mets last season, the Yankees, like, Mets didn't even make the playoffs. The Mets looked terrible, and they had a ridiculous contract that was out, contracts out there for players and tons of money in their salary cap. And so it doesn't always matter, but to act like it's not an advantage of some sort, it's obviously, not being fair about the facts, right? So in terms of, again, the contract, and also it's not just the contract and, to spread out the money and be able to pay other players. It's also, it lowers the team's payroll and the potential tax burden because it also affects how the taxes work. So I have an article up here. This is from ESPN. It says the collective bargaining agreement does not place a limit on the amount of money that you can be deferred, but teams have to set aside the present day value of the deferred money. So in Ohtani's case, around $44 million in cash each year in an escrow account. So is that accountability? I don't know if that's accountability exactly. it does say Shohei Ohtani is a generational player. It was an honor to, watch him make history throughout 6 seasons. This is what the Angels were saying. We feel extremely fortunate that Angel fans were able to witness him redefine what is possible in our sport. Of course, him not being an Angel no more means a lot of things, right? It's a good thing probably for baseball in general. I do want to bring up this tweet I found from Joe Pompliano. I don't want to say the name wrong, but I believe it's Joe Pompliano, at Joe Pompliano, Pompliano on Twitter. And basically he said Shohei Ohtani's $700 million deal is one of the most unique contracts in sports history. We talked about how it breaks down. He said this, I explained how the deferred contracts, this isn't a new thing, so I won't repeat him on that. He did say that, so why is Shohei doing this? MLB is treating it like a 10-year, $460 million deal from an accountant perspective, and Ohtani is leaving hundreds of millions on the table from a net present value perspective. The wholesome answer is that he doesn't need the money. Ohtani will make $50 million in endorsements this year versus someone like Aaron Judge or Bryce Harper, who typically earns $5 to $6 million annually. He also said, was Ohtani ever really worth $700 million? That's debatable, obviously, but he said these deferrals are offered to every team, which they would have to take into account and calculate the actual value of the deal before making an offer. The unique structure made is so Ohtani signs the richest contract in U.S. sports history by a mile, and just days later, we're calling him a good teammate who just wants to win. How often does that happen? So he's also looking at it from a perspective of it making Ohtani look like a team player in terms of like he's not maxing the Dodgers out right now. He's not making them pay all this money up front. So therefore, he's a good guy, right? Like it makes Ohtani look better to people from a fan perspective. Like he's not taking everything he can from the Dodgers. He's not maxing them out. And so he's helping the team. So it also is it looks good from a, viewpoint of that. He also said that there's some tax incentives. I did mention that. He said Ohtani is said to be paid out over $680 million over 10 years. Maybe it's just coincidence, but he doubts it. But tax law stipulates that if you take your deferred compensation payments over a period of 10 years or more, those payments will be taxed in the state where you reside rather than the state which you earn the compensation. That's also interesting, right? So technically speaking, Ohtani can move to somewhere where there are where there are lesser taxes, or he can move back to his home country. And in this theory, avoid these taxes, that would come on that money as well. He said that Bobby Bonilla did that, which I talked about with the Mets. He actually moved to Florida to avoid a lot of those to save, on the taxes. Also, he said that this is a good deal for the Dodgers. They will increase prices across the board: tickets, luxury suites, concessions, parking, and more. And they'll probably already negotiate multi-year sponsorship deals with Japanese brands. They said the average ticket prices before an Ohtani jumped up. The team's valuation has already increased 200% over the last decade, from $1.6 billion to $4.8 billion. And given MLB team trade at a 6x revenue multiple, the Dodgers will make up Ohtani's $700 million contract in valuation and growth alone over the next 10 to 20 years. I thought that was fascinating. So he says it's a win-win deal for everyone. Ohtani gets $700 million, potentially wins championships, grows his brand in a massive LA media market. The Dodgers, on the other hand, also make a ton of money, potentially win those championships, and they acquire one of the best, players in the world. Baseball fans get to see much more of Ohtani on TV, which we all agree is a good thing. And again, this is, let me give his name one more time. This is from Joe Pompliano. So go follow him on Twitter. He does a lot of these type of threads. So I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Of course, drop them in the comments whether you think that MLB needs to fix something here, if something is broken, or if you think the system is fine. It's, it's always been this way. This is the way MLB has always handled itself, and that, the teams who have lesser salary caps need to figure out ways to compete in this, game. And they have. Some of them have done really well through their farm systems and whatnot. Or if you think that, MLB definitely needs to adjust something here, that this can't be the way that, these teams get to keep taking advantage of these situations. All right, now I do want to move over to topic number 2, which is the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, the offside situation. Now, it's more about the way the team responded to this, right? Like the Chiefs, we obviously know, are one of the best teams in football. They've been one of the best teams in football for a very long time. They've had a lot of success. They've won championships. Patrick Mahomes typically has a good image in the media, from how people perceive him, how fans like him. He does really well from a media perspective, right? Nobody thinks he's a bad guy or an asshole or anything to that effect. So this kind of, I don't want to say came out of the blue or came out of left field, but it's one of those things where it's more magnified by the fact that it's the Chiefs and by the fact that it's Patrick Mahomes. So if you watch the game, the Chiefs lost, and part of it was there was a really huge play by Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey where they scored a touchdown, but it was taken away because of an offsides call. And this offsides call is why everybody was very upset. You see Patrick Mahomes after the game, cursing and being super upset, crying and whining about it. And so, and everyone complained about it on the Chiefs, right? They all complained about the call. And let me bring up the actual play first, just so you can look at. Well, I'm not going to show the whole play. I'm just going to show the offsides. So this is from Michael Lombardi. He put our Mahomes in the Chiefs saying this wasn't offsides. If this isn't offsides, I don't know what is. Obviously, as you can see in the image, in the circle, in the yellow circle, Tony is offsides, right? Like it's clear as day he is. And so when you look at this and, when we understand the fact that in sports, there's always gonna be fouls that are called and not called. And so we like to say you can't let a game hang on the balance of whether a foul is called or not. You don't want a foul to necessarily determine the game. And so I look at it this way. People will say, oh, well, this foul did determine this game, whether who won or lost. I don't really look at it that way. I look at it as what you do lead up to that point. Don't put yourself in a position where at the end of a game, a foul call or penalty can be what determines whether you win or lose. Like that can heavily affect the outcome. And I know it's easier said than done, but in this case, the way Mahomes and the Chiefs reacted to it is what made it worse. Like, understandably, you're upset about the foul call. That happens in every sport. This is not like unique to football, unique to the NFL. It's in basketball. It's in baseball. It's in every sport where even in, MMA, boxing, all these sports where people question how things are judged or called by referees, by referees, any of these kind of things. So in this case, Mahomes was very upset. He did say, obviously you don't want to react that way. I mean, I care, man. I love it. I love this game. I love my teammates. I want to go out there and put everything on the line to win, but obviously you can't do that. Can't be that way towards officials or really anybody in life. This is what Mahomes said on Monday in an interview with 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. So he's now kind of backtracking or apologizing for the way he behaved. He said he added, more than anything, I regret the way I acted towards Josh Allen after the game because he had nothing to do with it. Yeah, if you see the game, Josh Allen goes over to kind of congratulate him and he goes off. And here's the thing. So there's there's different ways to look at this. You can look at it from, the players complaining, the call itself. The thing with sports is there's a lot of emotion, right? Whether this game is a playoff game, a championship game, a regular game, first week of the season, there's always emotions. Like, guys are very into what they're doing. They're very dedicated to their sport. They put their bodies on the line, and it's just competition, right? So a competitive thing is always going to bring out this kind of fire in guys. He did say on Monday, I was still hot and emotional, but you can't do that. It's not a great example for kids watching the game. I was more upset about that than me on the sidelines. So again, that's another, part of this, another layer to peel back is, you're an example for kids. Patrick Mahomes is clearly one of the faces of the NFL. So you don't want to have that where it's he's the face of the NFL. He's the guy that the NFL puts out there for kids to look up to. And then on the flip side, he's behaving this way towards NFL employees, meaning the refs, and also towards other elite players at the sport, meaning, Josh Allen and stuff like this. So you definitely don't want to have these situations occurring too often. And again, the NFL handles these things a certain way, but it was more about the media perspective, the fan perspective of how these guys were handling it. It does say here, obviously I've seen it now, and if he didn't check and they weren't good, it is a foul. It's something you really see called in the NFL, but it was a foul. It's part of playing the game, man. You learn from it. It's part of being a person. You learn from your mistakes and try to be better next time. So that was also Mahomes acknowledging that the call was right. And again, when we pull up the image here, it clearly was right, right? This is very typical across all sports, right? In basketball, it happens with travels or, certain kind of fouls. Sometimes they call them a lot, sometimes they don't. They're all legitimate, but it's just the fact that this was in a high pressure game on the line kind of situation where really, it really magnified the situation in total. So again, we don't need to spend too much time on it. We don't need to beat up anybody too much on it, the refs, Mahomes, anything. The main point here is that it was a foul. It was offsides. No, he doesn't get called correctly every single time. That's sports. Sure, the players were upset about it. Again, that's sports. They're playing a highly competitive game that they love and they want to win. So of course they're emotional about it. But of course, the main thing is we have to have the emotional maturity to not act that way, to not act out, especially when cameras are on us, especially when, kids are watching, fans are watching. We know that, you could do this behind the scenes all you want, right? You could do this on an interview, on a podcast, on a radio interview, but to do it on the field in the heat of the moment, you have to have the emotional maturity to not act out that way. And again, that's my take on the Patrick Mahomes situation or the Chiefs situation. A lot of people call Mahomes a crybaby and all this kind of stuff. I get it because they're at like the top of the league, right? They're the elite. They've been winning. They've done it all. They've won championships. So you're going to have a target on your back. It's kind of like how Brady and Belichick had a target on their back. Anytime there's a team that's creating this elite situation where they're winning more often than not, where they're dominating the league at a certain level, you're going to get extra criticism. You're going to get the extra hate. It's what comes with it. So that's where I'm at with the whole Patrick Mahomes situation. It was offsides. No doubt about it. That's a fact. Does it not get called all the time? No, it doesn't. When it gets called, does that make it wrong? No, it doesn't. It just is what it is. It was a bad situation all around, kind of the perfect ingredients to cause this, to become quite such a story. But it is what it is. It was again, one more time, clearly offsides, guys. Like there's no other way to look at this. Clearly an offsides call. So it was the right call. All right. Last topic that I want to discuss with you guys today is Zion Williamson. Again, he's back in the headlines and he's being criticized once again for his conditioning, his diet, his, shape, his fitness, his all these kind of things. And so let me go ahead and just kind of go through this really quick. So if you, from Pelicans reporter Christian Clark, it says Williamson's poor work ethic has been a source of frustration for the Pelicans since they drafted him number 1 in 2019. Pelicans have tried to surround Williamson with veterans who have a track record of maximizing their potential. The team signed J.J. Redick in 2019. In 2022, they traded for C.J. McCollum. None of it has made an impact. The Pelicans have repeatedly stressed to Williamson that his diet and conditioning need to improve. Williamson, multiple sources have told Times-Picayune, doesn't listen. I do remember him being on, I want to say it was Gilbert Arenas' podcast, where he did acknowledge this, though. So it's a little weird that they're saying he's still not acknowledging it or not reacting or not responding, because he did respond to it. He did do a podcast appearance, which you don't see him talk publicly a lot either, where he acknowledged, him taking this seriously and that he was young and that he, didn't understand the gravity of it. But he's realizing that it was, something that was important for him to do. This is the first summer someone said where we've seen Zion take his profession seriously like that and invested in the offseason off the court in his own way. I think that is meaningful. This was Pelicans president David Griffin in September saying this. So, there was talks of it happening. And obviously when he came into this season, he looked pretty good. He looked like he was in good shape. Everything looked, people were talking about it. They thought it was, up on the upswing. But again, this is a guy we're talking about who could, in theory, dominate the league, right? He could dominate the NBA. He's one of the best young players, and he's going to get, this type of criticism because of that, especially when he's missing time, right? If he's hurt or anything like this, it's going to be highlighted. It's going to be highlighted because they need him healthy, and anytime a player isn't healthy, and then you have to reach for reasons why he's missing this time, why he's hurt. And so in this case, he's hurt. A lot of people will say because of his conditioning, because of his work ethic, because of the foods he eats, because of these kind of things. I'm not big into like attacking him over this kind of stuff personally. He's a 23-year-old. To me, that's a young guy, right? A young man. I don't call him a kid. I know a lot of people go, yeah, he's a kid. He's only 23. I don't say kid. He's 23. He's a grown man. Everything, everything is attributed to him as a grown man, right? So when things go wrong, we can't turn and be like, well, he's a kid. Yeah, he's young. He's a young guy. So that's certainly going to play into this. I don't know. I believe here he's responded to it. Again, I don't know if let me see if he's responded to it since. It says Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley addressed on TNT that night, reflecting their own experiences. I had the same problem my first and second year. I thought I was running hard because my talent's going to give me 20 points. When I started getting 30, 40, it's because I started doing certain things, Shaq said. He says that Williamson doesn't demand the ball and doesn't have to look like I'm the greatest ever. Again, that can also be a confidence thing, right? It could be a leadership thing. It could be a maturity thing. So maybe as he gets more mature, as he becomes a better leader in his own mind, right? That could, help these kind of things, because sometimes it's just that dominance mentality, that mentality, like, Kobe is famous for. When you have that, everything else is kind of not, I don't want to say ignored, but it's assumed that everything else is going right because you're playing the game that way. Now see, this is where Williamson said, let me see here. Yes. All I can do is control the things I can control, lock in on myself, lock in on my teammates, coaches, and everybody around with the Pelicans, he said, before tactically addressing Barkley and O'Neal. If it comes from a place where they just want to see me do better, thank you, he added. But if it comes from anywhere else, everybody is entitled to their own opinion. I can't control that. So, I mean, at least he's responding and reacting to these things, which is better than I think in the past. I don't think he really always did do that. I don't think he always did take these kind of things head on. And I think that's part of the leadership that people want to see from him, part of the accountability, part of the maturity. And so as you see that, you have a little more faith that, he can do those things, that he can get himself right to lead this organization. And I think a lot of this comes just from a frustration standpoint for the Pelicans, for their fans. They need some sort of excuse why Zion hasn't lived up to what people expected him to, why the Pelicans haven't with him. And so this is what it is, right? Like, this is the easy thing to point to. I don't think it's all of it. I don't think it's like, the reason for everything. I just think that it's an obvious thing for people to point at. And don't forget, on a grand scheme of things, he's in the NBA. He's a elite athlete. And so I don't think that he's in badass shape that everyone thinks he is, but from an NBA perspective, from an NBA professional elite athlete perspective, he is, right? So the internet takes it a little too far. I think social media, Twitter, all these things, they obviously create way more of a story, of a headline than needs to be necessarily. However, again, this definitely needs to get into check. Zion Williamson needs to get into check. He needs to grow up. It's kind of similar to the John Morant thing, right? Like, John Morant isn't having a, conditioning or diet or, that type of issue, but it's a maturity thing for what he's doing off the court. And it just seems silly. It seems stupid, the things they do. It's funny they came in, at the same time, but it just, in terms of, like, I think that it's not something that can't be fixed, right? It can be fixed, clearly. I think it's a maturity thing. I think that clearly he has all the ability in the world to do what they're asking him to do, to fix these things. And so I have faith, that Zion will get it all right eventually. Eventually, he's 23. He's still super young. Players come into the league at 23, some players. I know they come into the league younger and younger. And so I feel like you're going to see more and more of these type of situations. And again, Zion's under a magnifying glass, right? He's under the microscope because he's Zion. Like, when he came into the league, he was the next guy that was supposed to take the league to the next level. It's kind of like how Victor Wembanyama is right now, right? Like, if Victor Wembanyama started doing something wrong, he started getting hurt, seemed like he wasn't demanding the ball more, people would say they would find something to put it on, right? Obviously, they won't put it on his fitness in terms of his diet or anything. He's super skinny, but maybe they would say he's not working out in the gym enough. He's not putting on enough muscle. There'll be all kinds of excuses, right? Or he's too immature. These kind of things will pop up, right? We'll have to look for a reason why, right? So that's what's happening with Zion right now. He definitely needs to get it all in check. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, these people are lying or these people are wrong. The experts are right. But I just think that he'll get it right as he matures. And hopefully that happens. Like, right, we think that, at 23, you're a grown man. You're not a grown man. You're a young man for sure. Your mind isn't all the way there yet. So I would like to believe that it'll click. The problem is you just want to make sure that it clicks in time. You don't want it to be too late where it's like, people start to give up on you. People don't have the same faith in you. And I don't think that'll happen, right? Like, I don't believe that will be an issue in terms of Zion. I think that he's too talented. Someone will always give him that chance, that opportunity. And so he'll be fine. He'll get it together. He'll get better and better. And especially as the pressure continues to mount, as people continue to talk, as long as he can stay healthy, I think each season he goes along here, he'll get better and better in the department of his diet and his weight. And especially because as he ages, it's going to be harder and harder to rebound from those things, right? Like as a younger person, you can do those things, but it'll get harder and harder. And I'd like to believe that he'll respond the correct way. And the same thing goes with, like I said, like someone like John Morant. Like a lot of the things that he's doing are just immature. They're just immaturity things. And so as he ages, and for him, it's a little different because he's getting penalized for it in terms of the league, right? Like the league is suspending him. So he's being forced to adjust, forced to mature, forced to do these things earlier. While Zion obviously isn't being forced necessarily. So maybe the team could do something like that, or in his next contract, a team could more force these kind of things. Like he has to do some kind of accountability things with his diet or with his, his work ethic. And maybe that'll help. But I don't think like Zion is this lost cause. I don't think he's this bust. I don't think that, he'll not be able to get it right. I believe in him completely. Everything is valid. Both can be true. The concerns are valid, but also the hope that he doesn't carry this on for the rest of his career, or it's not a career killer. So those are my thoughts. Top 3 sports headlines of the week: Chiefs offside, Zion Williamson's work ethic, and the Shohei Ohtani Dodgers deferred contract. I'm curious what you guys think about these topics. Drop them in the comments. We'll be doing this episode every single week. Top 3 headlines of the week. If you guys drop in the comments, if there's certain times you prefer, we could do them at night. We could do them in the morning, whatever you guys prefer. I'm available to make it happen for you guys. I want to chop it up with you guys and get your thoughts. Other than that, guys, that is it for today. Don't forget to follow us on all social medias at Rival Fantasy. Visit rivalfantasy.com or download the Rival Fantasy Sports app. That's where you can find challenges, sports leagues, fantasy leagues, fantasy bingo. Everything that we offer is all at rivalfantasy.com, or you can just download the Rival Fantasy Sports app. Go into your app store right now, type Rival Fantasy Sports. The app will pop up, free to download. There's no cost. And go have fun on there. Other than that, again, I appreciate you guys for joining me, and we are out.